And John, let's start with you. What are the main sticking points in these negotiations?
There's a couple. I think the big one that everybody's focusing in on right now is wages and salaries for the pilots. The pilots group is looking for a range between 40 and 45% of an increase over a 2, 3, or 4-year contract. And Air Canada right now has been rumored to be offering 30%. So there's a significant gap between what Air Canada is offering and what the pilots are looking for.
Okay, so salary, a big one and a big gap there. Is there anything else we should know in terms of a sticking point?
Yeah, there's scheduling and how the pilots get scheduled and the amount of flying that they're doing. They're bidding for a certain set of flying, and what they're actually being deployed on day of flight is a very different set. So there's no consistency in terms of what they are planning to fly and what they're actually flying, and it's disrupting that work-life balance.
None of us knows what's happening, obviously, at the negotiating table or even, between the two parties away from the table. But as best as you can tell, John, what you know about these issues, how likely do you think it is that this is going to be resolved without a work stoppage?
I think that given the messaging that we're getting from the Air Canada management team, and then the statements made by the CEO, they consider to be these wage demands by ALPA to be unreasonable. And they are, and asking for binding arbitration from the government to stop this work stoppage before it even starts. I think we're heading for a work stoppage on 0001, September 18th.
Lesley, let's look at it from the traveling public side. I know there is a lot of anxiety there. I've seen it on social media. I've seen it among my friends and acquaintances. What about among your clients? What have you been seeing and hearing?
Well, the same thing, Ian. A lot of anxiety, a lot of people not knowing quite what to do. I do think that Air Canada's done a pretty good job on their website of setting out the dates and what you can do and how you can cancel. It's not much comfort, though, if you've got something like a cruise booked or a tour booked or a family wedding you need to go to. And people are scrambling and being very creative in what they're doing to get there.
So give us a sense of that.
Well, I've got people who've actually gone ahead and they've booked WestJet tickets going into Europe. And bear in mind, we are in the middle of the highest demand for Europe at the moment. And so what they've done is they've gone in and bought fully refundable WestJet tickets just in case, or maybe they've bought Lufthansa tickets or one of the other airlines flying out, and they're keeping that as their sort of insurance policy. So they know that they will get to Europe one way or another. And as Air Canada said, if Air Canada cancels the flights, you get a full refund, irrespective of the fare basis.
I know in Vancouver, probably in your city, Calgary as well, and maybe Edmonton, there are people who didn't even realize that Porter, for example, flies long haul to Toronto now, and they're starting to look for options and booking, for example, on Porter, among others. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing, do you think coming out of this that an airline like Porter might actually benefit long-term from just the, kind of rising visibility?
Well, they definitely will. I had circumstances to book them myself for family coming to visit me from Ireland. And I booked them flying from Toronto into Vancouver on Porter. And then I booked them from Vancouver to Calgary to come and visit me. And the Vancouver to Calgary fare was higher than the Porter airline. Couldn't believe it.
Wow. John, the Prime Minister today was asked whether the government would step in and end a strike if indeed one did begin, and he said no. So if we do get to a work stoppage, and you're pointing out that it seems likely we're headed in that direction, do you have a sense of how long that would go on?
I think that when you look at the way these dynamics typically work in a strike for a large airline like Air Canada, I would say that the horizon would be 7 days to 10 days at most. And if Mr. Trudeau and the federal government get significant pressure, they may jump in after day 2 or day 3. The words today don't seem very encouraging for that. So I think the resolution of this dispute will be back at the bargaining table, and Air Canada is going to have to come through and put a little water in their wine and come closer to where the union is looking for a settlement.
It's really hard, John, for members of the public to assess kind of who's the villain here, if indeed there is a villain. And again, from your aviation business analyst perspective, how do you feel about the wage demands here of the pilots and what Air Canada has come back with? Like, is there one side or the other in particular that you think is on the right path?
No, I think both of them have got some rethinking to do in terms of their positions. I think Air Canada has to realize that the new standard for wages for pilots has changed significantly over the last 24 to 36 months with a number of agreements that have been made in the U.S. for pilots, and that the pilots know that they can't expect an exact match of Canadian wages with U.S. wages. There's too much of a disparity in terms of the cost of living and living in Canada. And I think that, they may have to reduce their demands somewhat, but there's going to have to be a significant compromise to get a settlement. I figure somewhere between about 38 and 42% will probably make the deal work.
Lesley, 30 seconds left. Any final words for those people who had plans to fly Air Canada next week who are nervous tonight?
Right. Well, it all depends on what's on the other end of your flight. So if you haven't got anything important or crucial, then maybe just sit back and wait. And if Air Canada cancels, you'll get a full refund. But as I said, if you've got plans to go over there, you need a backup.
Lesley Keyter, John Gradek, thank you so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good evening.